Looks like we are good, Natalie.
All right,
Go ahead.
Andrew, were you gonna kick us off?
Yeah, yeah. Good afternoon, midday, everyone. And thanks for hopping on our webinar, Safeguarding Your Financial Institutions, A Guide to Compliance. Currently, we have, first before I just want to go over this. To ensure, I want to go over this first, just to ensure we have a seamless experience, please take note of the following guidelines. Audio check. If you encounter audio issues, kindly check your speaker's volume settings first. Webinar recording. We understand your busy schedules. Rest assured we'll provide you a recording of the webinar for your reference. Interactive engagement. We encourage your active participation. Feel free to engage with us through chat, video, or discussions. Ask questions. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A button to ask questions at any time. Anonymous queries. If you prefer to keep your questions private, please feel free to direct message any member of our team. We respect your confidentiality and won't disclose your name when addressing your query. Exclusive reward. As a token of our appreciation for your time and participation in this event, each attendee who stays with us for the entire webinar will receive a $75 Amex gift card, and that will be sent via your email address on file. Resource access. In case you miss any valuable resource during the webinar, please don't hesitate to email us, and this is my email, ashatman@westtechsolutions.com for access. And with that, I'm very proud to present our guest speaker and real cyber expert. She's been in the industry for a very, very long time. Natalie Suarez, who works with one of our partners, ConnectWise. Also on the call is Jason Hansen, the Director of Cybersecurity at West Tech Solutions, and myself, Andrew Shatman. I'm the Sales Director at West Tech Solutions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand Natalie Suarez the mic, and she's going to knowledge us.
All right, thank you so much. So happy to be here today. Hopefully, apologies for joining a couple minutes late. Sometimes you just have those tech issues, and we need some speaker volume in order to be able to speak on these things. So I'm glad everything's working out now. And so, like Andrew said, feel free to use the Q&A. I believe the chat is probably disabled on this conference, so use the Q&A if you want to interact with us. The other participants shouldn't be able to see your questions, and you can post anonymously if you like. Feel free to ask questions at any point, and Andrew will alert me if anything comes in, and I will reply to you guys. So, a little bit about me. I am technical. I started my career as a software developer, and now I pretty much travel the country, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to travel internationally to speak about cybersecurity. I am super passionate about my family, threat intelligence, and Lego, and not necessarily in that order, but that's really all that's important here. So I want to talk to you about cybersecurity, risk, and compliance. So I know you guys have this this is a mouthful, Part 500 of the Title 23 of the official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations. That's quite a mouthful. So we're going to focus on that today. But you need to have a little bit of background. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk about what exactly is this whole cybersecurity thing? What are some of the concerns you may have as a small to medium-sized business, particularly in the financial industry? I'm going to actually show you a little bit about how attackers work and demonstrate a real attack for you. Of course, in PowerPoint, we're not going to go after anyone today. We're going to talk about compliance. We're just going to call it the 23 NYCRR 500 compliance because that other title is quite a tongue twister. We'll talk about how you protect your business, risk and responsibility. And if we have time, we'll do a cybersecurity analogy, but I really want to make sure you understand this new regulation that applies to you. So, cybersecurity, it's one of those terms that we hear a lot. I feel kind of like it's lost its meaning in some ways. And I like to come across with a little bit of humor. At least I think I'm funny, right? So, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Anyone want to venture to guess what movie that came from? And you guys, Andrew and Jason, cannot participate because you have seen the slides, and that could kind of be cheating. But if anyone who's on the call wants to post in the Q&A who they think that is, I'll give you like another second or so. Well, this is one of my little favorite nerd movies, The Princess Bride, and Mandy Patinkin is such a good actor. But what is cybersecurity really about? It is really about managing risk. And as a business, you only care about cybersecurity whenever it is going to reduce your risk or it's going to help you save money or actually help improve your processes, which in turn will save you money, which honestly, it can do that. And what are some of those concerns that you have as a small to medium-sized business? And I may actually, if it's okay with you, Jason, I may actually put you on the spot here. One of those is a lot of times people tend to think of it as an IT challenge when really it's a business challenge. It's not all about IT, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a few. My business is cybersecurity. Jason's business is cybersecurity. Andrew's business is cybersecurity. Not necessarily yours. You're concentrating on those financial aspects, your financial business. But guess what? Even two businesses that are in the exact same vertical can have very different business objectives and very different risk tolerance levels. So cybersecurity is never a one size fits all. Um, Remote workforce. I'm sure you've had to deal with a little bit of the remote workforce issues. Maybe you don't have anyone in your org with any cyber skills. Are you ready, Jason, to be put on the spot? Can you unmute yourself? Come on
Yeah, I'm
camera and
ready.
join me. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. So any of these stand out to you? You're hearing a couple of these in particular from some of these clients or anything
Oh,
else
yeah.
that I didn't cover? What do you
I
think?
mean, confusion is a big one, because the
Yeah.
the wording on the stuff is so vague that you almost have to have like a law degree to even kind of understand it.
I know.
And the other one is the cybersecurity set. It's a thing. I have issues staffing people that have those. It's a major issue to get the people that have the correct
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, the correct
It is.
certifications, and that's trying to bring on experts. So of course, small businesses aren't going to can't have the staff that know that just because there's such a high demand. So those two things right there are really the biggest things: not understanding the regulation and not having people who can properly
Mm-hmm.
implement.
I know it's so complicated and it really is confusing. And, that leads us into this whole global legislation bullet I have here, right? A lot of times people don't realize that this legislation, what most of it has in common, whether it's in the US or abroad, is it really applies to you when your client is in that area. It doesn't necessarily only apply to you when you're in that area. It's like if you have customers in a different state like Utah or New York, excuse me, not New York, we're in New York, or California, or even across the pond, like GDPR, you have to understand those privacy laws as well. And that's why it's so important to have an expert like West Tech in your court, because they'll translate all that for you and make it make sense as far as what you need to do for your company. And we never want to discount the reputation damage that a cyber incident or breach can cause. And notice I use two different terms there. Breach is a technical and a legal term. So you never want to use that breach term unless you're being advised to do so by a professional, right, Jason?
Yes.
Okay. So, Jason and I are experts in cyber, but we use resources. We don't just, make up stats and make stuff up, even though that's fun sometimes, isn't it? So we like to show we like to show that we're taking our data from some reputable sources. And Verizon is one of those reputable sources. That's a tongue twister today. This is the Verizon DEBR. It's the Data Breach Investigations Report. You see, they have analyzed over almost 1 million incidents over the past few years, of which a little over a quarter of those were actual breaches. And the way that these breaches and incidents are happening are through credentials, phishing, and exploit vulnerabilities. And credentials, if you guys could engage with me in chat for a moment, how do you think these bad guys get these credentials? And this will be like a common theme throughout this presentation. Anyone want to venture to guess in Q&A? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, someone did. Yeah, need to also avoid regulatory costs and fines. That is actually a really good one. You want to definitely avoid those. Yeah, we got a little bit of interaction here. Yes, credentials are usually purchased on the dark web, but the way they get there in the first place is very interesting. There's many ways. One of them is you are breached, or say you use the same, and this happens a lot, that people use their corporate email and that same password they use to access their corporate infrastructure for their social media. And when I say social media, I'm not just talking like Facebook and Instagram, I'm also talking LinkedIn, right? And those big, those companies have been breached recently and many times, right? So when that happens, those credentials are then published to the dark web for sale. And what happens is, you have to remember times have changed so much. I only admit to 25 years of experience. I may have a little more, but that's all I'm admitting to. And back when I started my career, if you wanted to be a bad guy, you had to be a software developer. You had to be a network engineer. You couldn't just be somebody off the street who says, I think I want to fool around with some computers today and see what happens. Well, guess what? Today you can be that person who's like, oh, I just want to fool around with some computers today and see what happens. Because of the changes in technology like AI, ChatGPT, those things can help you. The fact that we have what we call ransomware as a service, which I'm going to demonstrate to you as well. And really, no organization is safe without a plan to handle all of these. And I want you to see what a big percentage credentials is even compared to phishing, because we always talk about phishing and everyone, kind of knows what that is. So again, I'm going to ask for a little interaction. So what percentage of breaches do you guys think involve the human element? No cheating, Jason. Or Andrew. No
Of
cheating.
course, you don't ask the sales guy.
No. Well, you had the slides. You know the answer. Well, you may be shocked to find out that it is a really big number. It's 74% of all breaches include the human element. It could be someone making an error, somebody misusing their privileges. And what I mean by that is maybe somebody does, you know, somebody's lazy and has administrative privileges to some piece of data, but they use their administrative privileges to check their email or surf the web, and then they get scammed. Or social engineering, where someone actually fools you into giving them information, which makes it easier for them to put it into an algorithm to guess your password. And fortunate, I don't know if this is fortunate or unfortunate, but we are actually doing a little bit better. The previous year, the Dibber reported that it was about 82%. And most of these attacks do involve external actors. And I think this will come as a shock to no one that most of these threat actors are financially driven. So, what is this ransomware as a service thing? Well, remember how I told you that back in the day you had to know how to write software, you had to know how to do all this stuff to be a bad guy? Now there's only two things you need to know. You need to know how to get to the dark web, which is super easy. I'm going to tell you right now. You get what we call a Tor browser, that stands for the onion router, and that will get you to the dark web. Don't go there if you're faint of heart. And also some cryptocurrency. And you can buy anything you desire. And I mean anything. Drugs, human trafficking, lots of bad stuff. Terrorist recipe books, but I believe those are available on the open internet these days, right? Even some of the cyber criminals have decided to start posting stuff on the open internet versus the dark web, making it even more accessible. And with the advent of ChatGPT, you can ask a few questions and maybe get some code running yourself with very little knowledge. YouTube and ChatGPT, and you're ready to go, right? So what these guys have decided is, hey, we did so good at making all this bad code. Why don't we spread the wealth? And it's really cute. They call their customers affiliates. And these affiliates come to the dark web and they buy the services. So they may just take the whole software package and run everything themselves, or they may share with the ransomware originator, say, hey, I need a little help with this. So they may call their help desk, they may use their documentation, they may use their payment processing centers, and it really is organized crime. It's really unbelievable, but there's a lot of stuff you can buy out there. And honestly, paying these bad guys, not a good idea for a lot of reasons. If you do pay them honestly, and that's why so many of these laws are requiring that you report if you do make a ransomware payment, because you could be funding terrorism, you could be funding human trafficking, you could be funding the drug trade, you could be funding additional ransomware. That's probably the least offensive thing you could be funding if you pay a ransom. And your chances of getting your stuff back, all of it back, are very slim. I don't know about you, Jason, but lots of times the question I hear here is, why would these bad guys care about my data? Do you hear that?
Yeah, I do. I hear it all the time. We're too small. We're not a target. And
Yeah,
it's
and
yep.
it's the
Any
wrong
data is
question.
valuable. Yes,
Yeah, it's the
exactly.
wrong question. The question should be is how long can you stay in business without your data?
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
look at that. Only 4% of companies get everything back. Can you stay in business with 4% of your data? Gosh, I would cry if I only got 4% of my personal data back, right?
Especially with the amount that these ransomware people charge. So you're
Oh, I
talking
know.
20, 30 or more a grand to get 8%, to get 4% of your data back
I
just
know.
doesn't seem worth it to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And not just that, but they're greedy, aren't they? I mean, they don't
Yeah.
just stop at the ransom. And sometimes they aren't even encrypting. Sometimes they're
Yes.
going straight to the denial of service. We call it a DDoS, distributed denial of service. And there's many different flavors of that. We're not going to go too techie on you guys. We don't want to bore you. But the thing is, all you need to know is that makes your resources either unavailable to you or your customers or to both of you. And they'll say, hey, you want me to stop? Better pay me again. Or the other one is, oh, I have your data, right? Unless you want me to now release your data, you're going to have to pay me again. And then, oh, well, maybe the negotiations are going poorly for them, or they are just honestly, they're in it for the money, right? They're even starting to pick up the phone, actually make phone calls, which is unheard of in this day and age. They're not sending text messages. Well, they're probably doing that too, but they will actually pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Customer of financial institution ABC. And I'm doing that because I don't know which financial institutions we have on the call and I don't want to call anybody out, and say, hey, I got your data, Mr. Customer, from financial institution ABC, and they don't want to pay me to keep your data private, but I want you to pay me to keep your data private. And I don't know about you, but if I got one of those calls, I'd be pretty angry. I might not be doing business with financial institution ABC anymore, right? So I want to show you some stories from the current landscape around you. You may be thinking, why does ChatGPT or Facebook or any of this stuff apply to me? Well, you know what? The reason it applies to you, again, is what I said earlier. Lots of people reuse their username and password. And then when Facebook gets breached or ChatGPT gets breached or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, then those credentials are on the dark web and nobody's manually pounding on a keyboard. I said typewriter the other day. I really dated myself on a keyboard, and trying to break in. This is all automated stuff, and if they don't know how to automate it, I can assure you someone is selling it to some affiliate so they can. Things that you should be aware of, and there's a particular attack which I find really fascinating, but it's really gruesome, is called pig butchering. It's even a gruesome term. I don't know if any of you listen to any podcasts. I don't know if you do, Jason. Do you ever listen to Darknet Diaries?
Oh, I love it. Yep, the
Did
one
you
just
hear the
recently about the
last
pig butchering.
one?
Yes, it's insanely interesting.
Oh, it's insane. Even if you don't like cyber, it was extremely insane, but you better have a strong stomach because we're talking about human sacrifice, voodoo. It's just unbelievable. I had no clue that that the cyber criminals were doing all that stuff. And what pig butchering is they go after people with money. So they go after like executives and leaders. They also go after the elderly, and they're romance scams is what they are. And you think you've developed a relationship with someone, and they get you to invest, and it's very elaborate. They have it set up so it looks like the investments are doing great, and then when you try to get any money out, that they will milk you dry. They will milk you dry. If you guys like podcasts, even if you're not into cyber, that Darknet Diaries, that last one is incredible. Highly recommend that. So let's move on. So let me show you this attack. This is something that's available for purchase on the dark web. There are a couple: Evil Proxy, Greatness. I'm sure there are others. And the way this works, this is a phishing as a service attack. And you have a user. This user gets an email from somebody. In this case, they get an email from who they think is Microsoft Office. And Microsoft Office, in quotes, sends an email to this user, Bob. If your name is Bob, I apologize. It's just the name I always choose. So I'm sorry up front. And Bob gets this email from Microsoft, and it says, Bob, your credentials have been compromised, and you must immediately click here and reset your password. So a couple pieces of advice I'm going to give right here. If you get an email from someone you know, but you're not expecting it, you're not expecting the QR code, you're not expecting the link, you're not expecting the document, don't click on it. Your spidey senses should tingle, because bad guys have many ways of spoofing legitimate email addresses. And how do you know the person that you're getting the email from has not been compromised themselves? So we call this an attacker in the middle, an actor in the middle attack. And that's why we're showing this guy in the hoodie in the middle. And we all know this guy's obviously a hacker, right, guys? Because he's got a black hoodie on. I won't tell you how many black hoodies I own, but I'm not a hacker. So anyway, so he has this site set up in the middle. That's why we call it an attacker in the middle attack. And an actor in the middle. It used to be called man in the middle, but I've been told it's now attacker in the middle. But I don't care. Man in the middle, whatever. And he set up this phishing website. And the only thing for you to understand here, again, if you're technical, bear with me, because I am going to greatly simplify this so you guys can really understand what I'm talking about. This acts as a reverse proxy server. And what a proxy server does is it passes communications back and forth from one server or computer to another computer. And that's all you need to know for purposes of this attack. It really is truly a lot more complex than that. If you want to Google it or ask us questions on it, we can share more detail. I do want to point out that all communications here are TLS encrypted. Again, back in the old days when I started, if you saw that little shield in the corner of your web browser and there was no errors with the certificate, we were like, oh, you're good. Not anymore, guys. If you see that, all that means is your communication between you and that end that you're going to is encrypted. And in this case, everything's encrypted, but it doesn't matter because your communication, number one, is encrypted between you and the bad guy. But in this case, you're going to see that it doesn't even matter. The bad guy is not even going to attempt to decrypt your information. He doesn't care in this case. But that does not mean you're safe. So what happens is the user clicks on this email and he inputs his username and password. And then Bob goes, ooh, I don't think I was supposed to do that. I kind of recall something about it should be from someone I know. Okay, I know Microsoft, but was I expecting this? No, I wasn't. But I got to where I wanted to be. I got to office.com. So everything's probably fine, right? Well, sorry, Bob, it's not, but it hasn't gone bad yet. So Office gets the credentials, the username and password, and says, ah, person I know. And it says, oh, person I know, I'm going to need you to provide your multi-factor authentication. Again, greatly simplifying. There's all kinds of multi-factor authentication. Some are better than others. He gets a code on his phone. He inputs that code. Oops, wrong way. He inputs that code and that gets sent back through the phishing website. Notice everything's going through the threat actor. He has everything, but he doesn't really care, honestly. He still doesn't care. So then he forwards that authentication information back to office.com. And so Office goes, oh, I got username, I got password, I got multi-factor authentication. Life's good. This is where it all turns bad. It returns what we call a session cookie. And in this case, the session cookie will always, in any case, the session cookie, what you need to know about that is that includes all the information Mr. Attacker needs to be you. So I just showed you an attack that defeats multi-factor authentication. There's more talk in this presentation about multi-factor authentication. Am I showing you this because multi-factor authentication is bad? Jason and Andrew, you can shake your head no. No, I'm not. The reason I'm showing you this is because there is not any one protection that is going to save your bacon. You like that? Pig butchering, save your bacon. I'm on a roll. You need something called defense in depth. So what would defense in depth and what could help with this type of attack? Well, one, security awareness training, right? Mr. User needs to know that he shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. But as we saw earlier, humans still make mistakes. A lot of times we just need to slow down. Sometimes when we're moving fast, we do silly things. But maybe he was just moving fast and he did a silly thing. You should have what I call, or what we call, a culture of cybersecurity, right? A good cybersecurity culture, which means I made a mistake. I immediately say, whoa, I made a mistake. And we give the professionals time to clean up our mistake. Maybe log us out of every session of our account, freeze our office account, and do a little investigation using some technology like endpoint detection and response, a security information and event manager. And we look using those technologies and we say, oh, okay, so we've reset everything. Bob is okay. Nobody got in. But what happens if Bob doesn't do that and it keeps going? Well, if it keeps going, what happens is, well, all this traffic going back and forth, this could be detected by a security information and event management system, particularly if the attacker takes that session cookie and logs in. Let's just for fun say he's in Lithuania. Nothing against any Lithuanians. That just happened to be the country I thought of right now. So he's in Lithuania. You're in New York City. You log into your account. So Office says, oh, Bob logged in from New York City. And 15 minutes later, Bob logs in from Lithuania. That doesn't seem like possible travel. Well, it's not. So we would call that an impossible travel alert. And the SIM fires off an alert and says, hey, Bob's logging in from two very strange locations. Is he in New York City or is he in Lithuania? That would alert us that something was wrong. Another thing these threat actors commonly do is they'll take, now they have, remember, they have access to your email, all your documents in your OneDrive, your SharePoint, etc., your address list. So they know your customers, they know your colleagues. Another thing they may do is they may send out some emails, a big bunch of emails. Maybe they're exfiltrating data via email or doing a bunch of downloads. Well, a SIM could catch a bunch of downloads, an unusual amount of information being downloaded. It could catch, and when they're using your email, they clean up after themselves. So they create a bunch of rules and then they delete a bunch of rules. And unless you as a person are in the exact right place at the exact right time, you're not going to see that, but a SIM can catch that. What if this attacker decides to propagate spam throughout your entire organization? Maybe they don't like your credentials. They want to see if they can get somebody else to fall for something in your organization. Now they know everyone. So they send a document from your real email for everyone to click on, but they know not to click on it, right? But what if somebody does? And that's malware. Well, if you have something called endpoint detection and response on your workstations, that should stop that malware from executing. So, and I could go on and on. There's so many protections that could help you here, but why do that when I can quiz you again? Now, it's a little hard to do a multiple choice quiz on a webinar. So let me suggest this. Which one of these items do you think is worth the most money? Maybe if you want to post that in the chat. Did you guys already see the answer to this, Jason and Andrew?
I did not know.
No, I
Oh,
did not.
oh, okay. Well, believe it or not, it's an infant social security number. $11 million. That crazy? So let me give you some personal advice. If you have children, freeze the credit report so that when they become adults, they're not seeing that. Now, I did mean to put another one in here, which I chose the wrong quiz, but does anyone know what like corporate access to a corporate infrastructure, like network access? would cost what a bad guy normally on average would pay for that. It's anywhere between $2,000 and $4,000. That's the average. So that means some of it's much higher and some of it's much lower. But I think it's very interesting. I was kind of shocked myself when I figured out that a social security number, I guess they're so tired of seeing our socials from all the credit reporting breaches that they don't even care about them anymore. They're only worth $1 each. So, so what are we here for? Let's talk about compliance. All right, so what is this? Part 500 of Title 23 of the official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations. Well, this is a regulation implemented by the New York Department of Financial Services, and the purpose is to protect sensitive data and information that is held by financial institutions operating in New York. And it's based on something we call NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. So it aligns very well. In some cases, it aligns very well. In some ways, and I'll kind of point it out, it doesn't align so well with NIST because of the way it recommends you implement stuff. But so what are the key points? So the key points are, who does it apply to? It applies to entities regulated by DFS, which includes banks, insurance companies, and other financial service providers. It includes provisions for creating a cybersecurity program. It includes provisions for having an office of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, who oversees that program. It requires things like penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. People sometimes confuse those two. A vulnerability assessment is more like network scans and looking at, ports that might be open on a firewall, kind of stuff like that. Where a penetration test is much more what's the word? I don't want to say divisive. It's much more intrusive, actually. It can even include, yeah, I couldn't think of that word for a moment. It can even include them trying to socially engineer you to get into places they shouldn't. Multi-factor authentication, we talked a little bit of that. That is beyond usernames and passwords. It does include an incident response plan. That is a written plan about what you should do when an incident happens, because they're so prolific right now. And again, another change in the landscape is these bad guys are really going after small to medium-sized businesses because they're thinking, hey, they don't have the infrastructure and the protections that the large businesses have, and we're just able to get so much more money out of them because of that. And even in the state of New York, almost half your businesses are small businesses, and that's crazy compared to the rest of the nation. That is a really high ratio. So that's crazy. Data encryption, that information must be encrypted in transit and at rest. Again, and all of these on their own can be defeated, but together they really help you. Third-party service providers, you need to account for third-party risk. What risk is proposed to you by other maybe payment processors or maybe check printers or whatever that's in your supply chain. Training and awareness. Actually doing that security awareness training, having those programs, and those need to really be done more than once a year. I hate to tell you, it needs to be like ongoing little snippets. I think one of the analogies I heard is, if you think about when you were in college, what information did you retain? Did you retain the information that you learned little by little over time, or did you retain the information when you crammed for a test and aced the test the next day? I'll let you all think about the answer to that one. And then they do require you to do an annual certification. And there's a couple different forms that you may have to fill out for that certification. So who are these entities? So the definition changed a little with the amendment. Before it gave covered entities didn't include people who were regulated by other government agencies. Now it does. It doesn't matter if you're also regulated by another government agency, you could still be considered covered under this act. Now, there are some limited exemptions, and the exemptions don't mean you're exempt from every part of the act. They only mean you're exempt from doing certain things. So let's talk about kind of what those dates are and what some of those things are. Did you have anything you wanted to add here, Jason, before I go to the next slide?
No, this is all like, yeah, that amendment was just passed this November. So this is all brand new. And it's not even, the wording's not even official yet. This is
Yeah, I know.
this is based on the draft. So some of this still could be up in the air, but most likely this should be the codified version. So that's
Yes.
we're all learning this. You are.
Yeah, exactly. We're all learning this together. So what are some important implementation dates for the SMBs? Well, so I just showed you those additional exemptions. It went from 10 employees to 20, so it gave you a little buffer, went from 5 million to 7.5 million. Some other new stuff is you do have to notify them of attacks and especially ransomware deployment, any ransom payments. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The compliance submissions are going to be due on April 15th along with your taxes. Uh, I guess it's so you don't forget, right? And then the filing is either going to be a certification of compliance or non-compliance. So you don't get, if you're not compliant, you don't get away with just doing nothing, right? You don't want to pay those fines. You want to do something. Risk assessments are required and must be renewed and updated at least annually. And we recommend, honestly, we do recommend at a minimum annually as a cyber professional. If there have been significant, like what we call a disruptor, like AI is a serious disruptor, that could something like that can cause you to have to do some type of, maybe not the full evaluation, but evaluation of certain things because that changes your risk profile. And maybe, that's not within your risk tolerance at all. And then you have to update your policies too. And I did put some asterisks in here. And if you are like one of these exempted, you may not have to do these, but I'll tell you right now, just because you're exempt from this, there's a saying we like to use. It's that being in compliance with a regulation, and it may change, right? But right now, being in compliance with a regulation does not mean you're secure. Being secure, though, will get you to regulation with one of these compliance standards because we would recommend that you update your policies annually when you do that risk assessment because things change. There are technology disruptors. There are maybe changes in the way your organization does business. There are many reasons why you may need to update policies that really don't have anything to do with being part of a regulation, but have to do with being secure. I mean, so examples of some of these policies are data retention, end of life management. That's referring kind of like to your hardware, when things are no longer, when your computers are no longer covered or getting updates, that's things you want to retire. That's a really simple thing you can do to protect yourself is make sure that your operating systems and your software that you use are updated and aren't at an end of life stage where whoever provided them is no longer supporting them. Remote access controls a policy, system and network monitoring policies, which goes along with software like a security information event management system, security awareness and training policies, system and application security policies, incident notification policies, and vulnerability management policies. Like if we have vulnerabilities, when do we decide to patch them? Are they high critical vulnerabilities? Are they low? Are they high, but they don't impact anything we do because we don't use that particular software that's identified with that high? There's all kinds of considerations, which is why it's so important to partner with someone like Westech because they'll take the weight of understanding that off your shoulders so you can concentrate on what you do. In May of next year, I know we're already talking about next year, 2025. I think I skipped over MFA. MFA is actually something that you have to have if you want cybersecurity insurance. You have to have multi-factor authentication. So I don't understand. This is why we say that about being in compliance with a reg isn't going to get you your cyber stuff secured because MFA is really something you should be doing. And it's really 30 seconds that will save you a lot of time and heartache in the long run. And that's annual cybersecurity awareness training. You really need to do that. Again, you can tell this was not written by a cyber professional by some of these things that aren't required because that gives me heart palpitations, the MFA. How about you, Jason? Did these two give you heart palpitations too?
And honestly, until the amendment, most businesses were exempt from having MFA. And so that I always thought was the strangest to me because that stops so many of these first line attacks. And the
It
same with the
does.
cybersecurity awareness. I mean, I would rather, if I had
Yes.
to choose between the two, I'd rather have security awareness training. That should be number one.
Yes.
That should be, you
Yes.
can't do anything without your users being educated. So
And
I've
you can't have
always thought
cyber
this was
insurance. without these two
Yes,
things.
exactly. Yes. I
Yeah,
mean, it's nice to see at least the insurance industry is kind of
right.
paving the way to getting more companies secure.
Yes, they are.
Shame it's not more of these
Yeah,
regulations and compliance that would actually putting some more, not
I
putting any real
know.
teeth into like securing these organizations.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So, what else here? And I'm not going to read all this to you, but you're going to see this actually again in a couple slides that I'm going to share with you now. There's two things I want to share with you from our recommendations of how you could be secure. So, remember I told you this is not a technology challenge. It's actually you have to cover your people, your processes, and your technology to be secure. And I call this a three-legged stool. And we all know what happens with a three-legged stool. As long as you have three legs and they're all the same, they're all equidistant, they're all the same length, right? You're good. But you make one of those legs significantly shorter or it's missing altogether, and that's when trouble happens, right? I mean, you're in the financial industry. You guys know about the payment scams, about, someone gets an email supposedly from the CEO asking for a payment right away to a vendor or a customer for some reason. And oh, by the way, their ACH information has changed. We still see those scams happening. And why do those happen? Well, maybe the people didn't get trained. Maybe we don't have the right processes in place, like a process that says we don't ever change ACH information without a verbal confirmation from someone at a certain level. And there's a waiting period or we have to make phone calls. We always recommend if you get an email that is from someone and but you weren't expecting it, pick up the phone and give them a call. But don't call the phone, don't call the phone number in the email that you just got. Call the phone number to be good for them and ask and check it out. Now, in that financial, they certainly have the technology because that money is usually gone. But this still happens today, and that's why. So, what is the minimum acceptable technology? There are some things missing from here because security awareness training, honestly, is what I call a no duh. So, hopefully, that's not an offensive term to anyone. It's a no duh thing. We don't even talk about it anymore because it's so expected. Just like having a firewall is expected, right? Those are expected things. So, beyond the expected, what do you have if you want cyber insurance? And some of these go right back to that policy on monitoring, unless it has an EDR and a SIM to go with it, the policy is no good. An incident response plan, that's part of that law as well. Multi-factor authentication is part of that law. Business continuity, disaster recovery. What if the unthinkable happens? What if you do get attacked and everything's encrypted? How are you managing that backup and that disaster recovery? Do you know how long it's going to take to restore all your data? Is your data in a location that is disconnected? Can you live without the last 30 days or the last 2 weeks? You have to think about all this ahead of time. You don't want to be working on your BCDR plan or your incident response plan in the middle of a crisis because you're not going to be thinking clearly. And new for cyber insurance, but I see it's going to be covered in this law in 2025 is privileged access management. And that's actually kind of the basis for something we call zero trust. And zero trust is denying access by default, identity access management. And that privileged access management on top of that is, someone not using their admin credentials unless it's needed for the task they're doing. Someone not being able to access certain data unless they have, for my government days, we'll call it a need to know or a need to access that data. And then you do need all this for cyber insurance. You have anything to add there, Jason? Are we good?
No, that really covers, what I'm seeing as our biggest
Mm-hmm.
struggles when we talk with people. And January, December just came out, so I spent a lot of my December helping small companies, get ready for cyber and fill out
Yeah.
cyber insurance things. And so many were like, "Oh, okay." I had multiple that were like, "Well, I'm going to be uninsured because we don't have the money to
And
to
I
do
don't
this." So
recommend that.
exactly. So they're putting themselves at a double risk. They're missing
Yeah.
both the technology to secure themselves and the insurance to protect themselves if there's an issue. So it
Yeah.
really comes down. A lot of this is, we talk about it now, but they give you those year-long roadmaps because we need to be thinking
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity in 1, 3, 5 year increments in order to properly be protected.
Oh, definitely. And that's why we have to have that risk assessment more than just once. Because, I mean, the reason I chose this as a career and the reason I love technology and cyber so much is this is one of those careers where things are changing all the time and I love to learn. So we have to keep up with those changes, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is what makes it the most exciting. And
Yeah.
this week I'm sure you saw that mother of all breaches that got out. And I've been swamped, and all I want to do is read all of it and go
I
through it, but
know.
I just haven't had the chance to go through millions and millions of records.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So I just want to touch on risk and responsibility real quick. We are, you know, unfortunately, due to my technical issues, sometimes my computer lets me down. I just want to move through a couple of these really quickly. The only thing I really want to point out here is I want you guys to notice that you, as the business leader, data owner, you do own ultimate liability, but we're alongside you to help you make those decisions about risk. Remember what I said earlier, that all businesses, even all financial businesses, do not have the same business objectives, and they do not have the same risk tolerance. Your board and your CISO may have a different risk tolerance than another organization of the exact same size and target audience as you. So that's why you need to partner with a professional to understand all of this. And this is a circle. Nobody's pointing any fingers. We're all in it together. But you do establish the budget, and we always have to consider your business objectives and your risk tolerance. And it really boils down to this one line. The only thing I'll read to you off of here is, what risk level are you willing to accept to protect your most valuable assets? And as I showed you earlier, those assets do have monetary value. So Jason, you're a nerd just like me. I'm just going to put it out there. You sound so excited about all this technology and all this
Love
cyber
it.
stuff. But sometimes we talk in ways that the common person or someone who's in a different industry can't understand us, right?
That
Um,
looks like the sales guy.
yeah, that's the sales guy. That's Office Space, another one of my favorite movies. And so, what do we have to do to be able to translate that? I use this analogy. Everyone lives in a home. Maybe you're in New York. Maybe you live in a condo. Maybe you're living the high life, living downtown in the city in a condo or an apartment. You know, but it's still your home, right? Let's think about what we do to protect our home. So I'm going to build this because we're running out of time. So the first thing we do is identify what we have in our home. And these are some of the common things people say. You first have to, and this goes back to the compliance. They want you to have an asset inventory. So you need to identify what you have. How do you protect it? Well, doors and windows, locks, education. In my day, we used to tell kids don't answer the door to a stranger. Now it's don't accept a stranger's invitation on social media, right? Our yard signs or window stickers that say protected by whoever. How do we detect if someone gets past our defenses? An alarm, motion sensor, the Ring doorbell camera, which I hope you have MFA on if you have one, because it's been breached I don't know how many times. Your nosy neighbors. How do we respond once we detect? We may have a guard dog, guard cat, whatever. We may decide it's too dangerous and run away. Or maybe in a computer situation, we decide it's too dangerous. And I'll give you a piece of advice here: never power down the computer. Disconnect it from the network. Don't power it down. You could destroy critical evidence by powering down something when you think it may have been involved in an incident. Um, we may call law enforcement. We may protect ourselves with a baseball bat. And let's round it back out to cybersecurity. How do we recover? That cyber incident response plan, that BCDR plan, and that backup together. Insurance, cyber insurance. We used to say backup was our last line of defense. Now cybersecurity insurance is our last line of defense. I live in Florida, so I have flood insurance because if a hurricane rips off my roof, my homeowner isn't going to cover it. We have liability, business liability, personal liability. And, even a cyber attack can have real world kinetic effects. Think of Stuxnet. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's a very interesting attack. And, a hurricane, tornado, whatever natural disaster. You guys have even had some hurricanes that have made it all the way up there. You might have to have FEMA involved or emergency responders, or in a cyber incident, an incident response team. And then the way I like to end these presentations is with this. I used to be a software developer. I used to have a boss who always say, perfect is the enemy of done. And I was like, that sounds so cool. It must be a real quote. And it is. It makes me super smart to have a philosopher quote in here, right? The perfect is the enemy of good. That's a Voltaire quote. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I shared a lot of info with you, a lot of info on the regulation, a lot of info on what you should be doing to protect your business within and out and without the regulation, right? And the most important part is just for you to start somewhere. And whether or not that regulation requires you to have cyber insurance or a risk assessment, you should have those things. And where should you start? You should start by talking to Westech. Start with a risk assessment so they can help you build that roadmap and have those discussions with you about your business objectives and your risk tolerance and build a program specific for you. And with that, so do we have any, oh, we do have some new uh, oh, okay, I got it. So yeah. Yep. Right. So someone put in here that they do quarantine many suspicious emails, but it's not foolproof. Do you have any insight into phishing structures that are getting past those gates? You know, unfortunately, these bad guys morph faster than you can shake a stick. Actually, your best protection against phishing is that security awareness training and that culture of that good culture of cybersecurity, where if someone does get really busy, hey, I'm not going to lie to you. I've clicked on stuff before, and it's not because I didn't recognize it as suspicious. It's because I was in a hurry. And then I click and go, oh God, now I got to call the CISO.
And then plus with those new AI tools, the things we
Yes.
used to rely on, you know, misspellings, they don't sound like a native speaker. Those we can't, those are out the window
No.
now because within seconds, I can have a customized email that will talk about your business. I can buy things, I can pull your LinkedIn profile. I can spend 2 seconds and customize it. And so that awareness
Yeah,
training does become the most important because
it
this AI,
does.
the AI change in the last year has completely
Oh
changed
yeah,
how
it's
the cyber
crazy.
landscape. Yes, that
I don't know how
it's
much
so
you've played
insane.
with it, but
Oh, I'm in it all the time.
I created, I did I was brave and I did a live demo and had it create 4 phishing emails in like less than 4 minutes. Just by telling it I was creating security awareness training. I mean, it did warn me not to use it for bad. And they were really good, even without giving it any specific information
Yes.
on the target. It was really good. Yep,
Oh, for sure.
active internal spoofing. Yep, that's a good one.
Yep. Oh, yes, that's another huge one. That's
That's
definitely, I
a
consider
really
that's
good
kind of
one. Yeah,
go
security
hand in
awareness
hand with
training.
security awareness training. Yep.
Oh yeah, that's a great. Yeah, she said, and I'm not going to give away names, but she said active internal spoofing test. Yeah, that's what I fell for was an active internal spoofing test. And then I know our CISO and I had to call him. I'm like, you're not going to believe what an idiot I am. He's like, did you click? I'm like, yes, don't tell my boss. Please.
And and it's not only just email. I built
Oh yeah.
a chat bot the other day that would make a phone call, and I programmed it to try to fish somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounded realistic. I told it not to take
Oh
no for an
yeah.
answer. And that took me
Yeah.
5 minutes, and it cost me nothing to get 5 free phone calls.
What
So,
about the deep fake videos?
oh yes,
Did you
yep,
guys did you hear about the dental commercial with Tom Hanks in it?
yes.
Tom Hanks had to put out a thing saying that's not really me. I'm not really endorsing this dental product. The deep fakes are good. So, a lot of people think it's fun to answer those quizzes on Facebook or to give away a picture of yourself on Facebook and say, "Hey, what will I look like when I'm 100 years old?" Guess where that data's going, people? It's going to bad guys. Don't share
Mhm.
that. And sometimes they're using it to guess your password. Sometimes they're using it, maybe that whole, remember we talked about that whole third party thing? Maybe they're using it to call your cell phone carrier and have your phone swapped to them because they can
Mhm.
answer your secret questions. One thing, we didn't cover is password manager. You should have a password manager, personally and professionally. You, Mr. Sales Guy, do you hear me? Password manager. Poor Andrew.
Of course. I went
Poor
over with
Andrew.
Jason. I know that's what I need.
Yeah.
We got one.
Jason
We have a corporate wide one. We make sure because
Yeah.
we do. That is
hits me with
super
that every
important.
day.
I'm just
Yep,
picking
to
on him
make
because
sure
he's
that's
sales.
yeah. Got to
That's
make sure that
okay.
stuff, that data is safe.
Yeah. And you know what else I store in my password manager? Some of these companies still make you answer those awful secret questions, like your first car, your first girlfriend, your first boyfriend. I mean, hopefully your first girl, in my case, I'm too old. I didn't have social media, so my first girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever is not available on social media, but every car I've ever owned is available on public records, right?
Mhm.
So I lie to those answers. So they're not, and I save that in my password manager too, you know? So
Yeah, because I mean, how many back to those Facebook quizzes? How many of those,
Mhm.
like in the early days, were just like these are security question farmings?
I know, I know, I know. And some of my friends would get so mad. I'm like, stop answering those. I'm not gonna play. Anyway, well, I think we're right up at the end of our time, and I don't see. This was fun. Thank you guys. You guys were great. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Pleasure working with you guys. And I hope everyone on the call got a lot out of this. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions. And my slides are full of resources. So if you need any of those links that goes with any of those things, oh, you're very welcome. I got to thank you. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And thank you for spending some time with me today. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.